I want to bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Peter Frankel now. I mean, wow, we weren't quite sure what to expect today in court. Now we've got 2 additional murder charges, bringing now 6 charges against Rex Heuermann, Jessica Taylor, and Sandra Castillo. I mean, how much does this bolster the prosecution's defense, given the evidence Laura was just laying out they now have?
Yeah, great to be with you, Marni. Thank you for having me. So I don't think anybody expected this. As a former prosecutor, I can tell you that, we have to recognize all the efforts that have been made, the tireless efforts by law enforcement to continue to work these cold cases. Now we know that these cases go back to at least 1993. So it's really, we wouldn't be having this conversation if not for the efforts of law enforcement, of course. That being said, as a defense attorney, this is an absolute nightmare for Mr. Heuermann. I mean, you can always have a trial, have dueling experts, and argue to the jury that DNA evidence may not be reliable, for example. But now, when you have all of these electronic documents that not only go to the planning of these horrific murders, but also talk about steps after the murders are completed, I mean, that's the sort of evidence that it's essentially impossible to try to defend against. So from the prosecution standpoint today, I mean, this evidence is overwhelming.
It's a blueprint to murder, right? If it is what it appears to be in this document. I'm also curious, and are you as well, Peter, about the fact that this second search led to this evidence. They were there almost a year ago. Heuermann has been behind bars since July of 2023. That we're only now seeing this evidence presented in this case. I'm imagining that is a question the defense is going to have about the timeline.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we know that there were 3 bodies or remains that were recovered in Manorville, which is about an hour from Gilgo Beach, 2 of which were apparently women, we know, and they went back, they searched the woods in Manorville in April of this year. Subsequent to that, they went back, they were able to get search warrants for Mr. Heuermann's home. They went back to the home. They spent a significant amount of time in the basement. So one can only surmise that between what they found back in the woods in Manorville and what they found in Heuermann's basement in May, that had a significant role in leading to this additional indictment. I think, Marni, what's also interesting here is the defense had been talking a lot about the prior police chief, James Burke, and how he was corrupt and he was potentially a suspect and compromised the investigation. He went to prison. But in light of what we know from today, the defense is going to have to rethink where they're going to go with their arguments because, James Burke and whatever he did or didn't do for the 3 years that he was police chief now becomes even less significant in trying to defend this case.
Finally, Peter, Heuermann's estranged wife, Asa Ellerup, filed for divorce shortly after his arrest, but we know in the months after that she has visited him a number of times in prison. She's shown up for several of these hearings. How important will his support be for his defense and maybe for the prosecution's case, given what she may or may not know?
I think it's very significant. What's interesting to me is that there seems to be a lot of evidence that demonstrates that when these murders were allegedly committed, that the family always seemed to be away out of town, gave him an opportunity to do what he was doing. So it goes back to something that Laura mentioned with respect to this book that was recovered in the house and whether or not that can actually be connected in some way to the rest of the family members, or if this was just another piece of the puzzle that relates specifically and only to Rex Heuermann.
Wow. Well, incredible developments in court today in this ongoing case against Rex Heuermann. Peter Frankel, thank you for your perspective. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.